Welcome to I Could Talk to You All Day. I'm Lauren Lefkowitz, recovering workaholic, perfectionist, and people pleaser.
And I'm John Spears, emerging from playing small, getting caught up in the inertia of life, and always being on.
I Could Talk to You All Day is a show for executives and emerging leaders. This is not just another leadership podcast. We're here to talk about what it means to be a leader while also being human.
So join us for raw, vulnerable, and probably pretty funny conversations about shifting from surviving at work and home to thriving in the life you've always wanted. Let's get the conversation started.
Hello, John.
Hey, Lauren Lefkowitz, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I am having one of those emoji days of like the straight line face guy. That's kind of like how I was before I got on the phone with you. And now I'm doing so much better.
Yes, I love that. I love that when we get together to record, we always start with sort of clearing all of our grievances. It's like Festivus every time we get together.
And boy, there were a lot of them today. It was like a half an hour of like, and this happened. And let me tell you about this. And now I just feel so much better.
Yes. It's so good to just like get that stuff out and just like be. We were also talking about how like our relationship facilitates that, that we can be any kind of way. We can vent, we can be constructive, we can be a friend, we can be a coach. Mm-hmm. We can both be miserable at the same time. We can both be full of joy at the same time, and we support each other. That leads right in to our topic today, which is the continuation of talking about relationships. And I love this topic. I could talk about this topic all day.
Oh my God, so can I.
Yeah. We should name our podcast something about talking all day. Where we left off last time was a little bit of a veer into self. Mm-hmm. And the importance of building a relationship with yourself and caring enough about you to even think about relationships beyond the transactional relationships. Mm-hmm. And so before we dive into today, any reflections on our last episode, John?
I think for me, relationships are such a container for so much love and possibility and support and accountability and challenge. But I think the thing that I really walked away from our last conversation thinking about is my relationship with myself and making sure that I have a healthy relationship with myself, that I'm honoring myself, that I acknowledge myself. And that sounds kind of, again, I think I might have said this, but that sounds kind of like weird to be like, oh, I'm going to acknowledge myself and honor myself. But I have found that when I started focusing on myself and doing that, not in necessarily a selfish way, but in a really loving and honoring way for who I am in the world and what I bring to the world, it's totally transformed every single relationship that I have. And that's just been a really incredible thing for me to witness in myself. Yeah. How about you?
That. For me, what I walked away with was a real recognition that I made a transition to caring more about myself. And it made my relationships shift in a lot of ways from service relationships, like wholehearted, handing you my service kinds of relationships, and then feeling guilty when I needed to ask for something back.
Yeah.
And it shifted that to really reciprocated relationships when I started to care about myself a little bit more, when I started to set boundaries. And it deepened my relationships with my colleagues. It also deepened my relationships when I broke both of my shoulders and I told everybody about it. And I shared a blog explaining my journey through having broken shoulders and not being able to pull my own pants down. That opens up some vulnerability. And we've talked about that in another episode. But, part of being in relationship is going beyond your job description at work. Mm-hmm. And I finally did that. And it just like enriched, I guess is the word. I was going to say richened, but I don't think that's a word.
It richened. I like creating some new words on this podcast. I'm down with
Absolutely.
that.
It enriched the way that I was with people at work,
Yeah.
and the way I was with myself, that I respected myself enough and I loved myself enough to say, I need to set some limits. I need to set some boundaries and have those conversations.
I was just talking to a client the other day, and they were saying how they have a real challenge being all in and
Mhm.
setting boundaries. And I think the thing that I love about relationships and the kind of conversations we're having is we can go move past that paradigm of being all in and giving everything, all of ourselves in a relationship at work, at home, whatever. It is totally possible to be all in and to show it fully and still have boundaries in a relationship. And I think that was to learn that and to experience that was such a transformative thing in my life. And I just love that that's a possibility, because I spent 39 years of my life, 40 years of my life, not understanding or not even being aware of that possibility. And I love being able to bring my whole self to work and be all in with my relationships there and all in on the work and the mission, and also say, I'm all in, but like, I'm not going to do that, or that's outside of my boundaries, and I'm not okay with that. And it's really empowering, and I just love that. I think it's so cool.
It's such a good throwback to our 2 episodes about boundaries. I feel like we're just advertising different episodes that we've recorded now. In that, when we talked about boundaries, one of our episodes was about setting boundaries, setting new boundaries, and the other episode was about opening your boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is possible to have boundaries and to decide to open boundaries and build relationships that way. And it doesn't mean that you have to drive your boss to the airport if you build a relationship with them that's beyond the transactional work.
Right.
Don't drive your boss to the airport.
Unless it's in your job description.
Unless it's in your job description. Yes, exactly. One of the questions that I think about when I think about relationship building is like, what's the benefit? And we talked a little bit about this last time, more in the scope of what's the benefit to us for building relationships with ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
But I can go to work every day and it can be totally okay if I don't have personal relationships with my coworkers. If I sort of cut that off at, we work together, we do our things, we do our responsibilities, and then I go home. And outside the organization, building relationships just like out in the wild. I think we get to an age and a stage of life where a lot of us assume like, these are the people I already have.
Yeah.
That's sort of it. The big question in that is why? Why build relationships beyond the transactional? You need this, I need that. Let's exchange things and go our separate ways.
From my perspective, I am someone who loves connection. I think it's even on my Instagram profile, like lover of connection. Like I really value knowing people and being known by people. And so for me, it's incredibly fulfilling to be able to have strong relationships and connections with the people I work with in my life in general. And that's just sort of an extension of who I am. I think I'm pretty authentic, and, the way I am outside of work is really the way I am, quote, in work or in that kind of context and setting. And so for me, it's hugely fulfilling to have deep, meaningful connections in my life in general. And so for me, it's like personally very fulfilling. As a leader, I think there are 2 other reasons why connections are really important at work, or relationships are important at work. The one is, when we have relationships at work, it really lays a strong foundation to be able to navigate challenging situations, problems, times. If there's no real connection or commitment to each other as a team or as a group of people or colleagues, then it's really easy to become fractured and to not give the person the benefit of the doubt if everything's just transactional. And so there's a real value above and beyond sort of the connection piece around operating effectively and efficiently in the way that organizations work. And the last for me as a leader is, I think it's really important for leaders to know their team and the people that they're working with. I mean, how people tick, what makes them tick, what's happening in their families. People feel really valued when you're like, how's your spouse? Or it was your anniversary, happy birthday. I'm not saying you need to know all the details about people's lives, but there's real value in understanding who the people are that you work with, what drives them, some of their experiences, their perspectives. And so I think as a leader, it's hugely valuable beyond the transactional stuff to have those strong relationships in the workplace. How about you?
Yeah. I think connection combats loneliness.
Mm,
I think a lot of us are walking around with a bunch of people feeling lonely. And when you go to a workplace every day, whether it's virtually or in person, there is an opportunity to connect that a lot of us miss because we're just like trying to get stuff done.
mhm.
I've got stuff to do. I've got deadlines. You've got deadlines. We're all rushing to get each other stuff and do the reactive work. And while you may be talking to people all day, if you're not deepening those relationships, it can be a really lonely crowd to be in. So when you build relationships, you're creating allyships,
Mhm.
right? So yes, it's great for working together. It's great for camaraderie. It's great for team building. But it's also like great for you as an individual self to know that if you're having a rough day, you can talk to a coworker. If you need some advice, some career advice, you've got people either inside or outside the organization or the company who you can go to. A lot of people wait until they're in trouble to start building relationships. And then it's this like panic. Can you help me? I've got a problem with my boss, or can you help me? I'm out looking for a job. I've been laid off, whatever the situation is. And the opportunity when you proactively build relationships internally and externally is that you're not starting from scratch. You're not starting anything from scratch. And if you're building in good times or even mediocre times, you have this great opportunity to already have relationships when you need them later. And you said earlier before we got on the podcast today, you said earlier that curiosity was a big factor for you. Tell me a little more about that.
Before I do, I just want to double tap on this idea of connection, combating loneliness, if I may. I had a few rough calls this morning, and there were lots of people on these calls, but one or two people that really knew me well and that I had strong relationships with. And after the call, I got slacks from them saying, "Hey, are you okay? Like, you wanna hop on a call real quick?" And that just made me feel really good that I have people on my team that know me and care enough about me to say, "Hey, what's going on? You want to talk?" And after I had a call with them, I felt so much better, and it really alleviated some of the frustration that I had. And so I just want to double tap that in the workplace, it's so, I mean, in life in general, to have people who know you and whom you have really strong relationships is such a support system and so important, I think, to our well-being. But to the point about curiosity, I am so curious about people, like what makes them tick. And I think in relationships, that's so important. I think a lot when I was growing up, or even in my early career, was really all about me. It was like, what can I do? What can I get out of this person? Particularly in like networking, you go to a networking event, it's like, what can I get? What can I get? Who can help me? And living in Washington, D.C. for like 17 years, it's all about like, who do you know? Who do you work for? All of that kind of stuff. And so there's always on the prowl to like, how can this person help me? But there's so much more in life, in people. There's experience, there's past, there's perspective. And I think I'm just generally really curious about people and what makes them tick and why they do what they do. And I think that's hugely valuable in life in general. It's really important for leaders to be curious in general, but I think particularly around people and relationships, that level of curiosity that we bring to the table in a conversation is so important to really fostering a deeper connection with folks.
Yeah. As you're talking, I'm thinking he's an extrovert.
But I'm not.
I know you're not, and I'm not either. So it made me sort of smile because you talk like an extrovert. I think I talk like an extrovert also.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to be naturally inclined to get out there and talk to people and get curious about people and be open book about yourself in order to build relationships successfully. right?
Totally.
Like you're very high energy. I'm high energy when I'm talking to people, but at my heart, I'm an introvert.
Mm-hmm.
I love quiet. I love being by myself. I love being one-on-one with people, but I can also walk into a crowd and network.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like a learned skill,
Yeah.
right? So we've talked about the why, but like, how do you do it? Right? Because I spent a whole bunch of years before I learned how to do it. That's not true. I spent a whole lot of years before I put into action what I already knew how to do, being more transactional and service oriented. Right. So I got curious about other people, but I didn't let them get curious about me. So the
Mm-hmm.
relationships were often pretty one-sided because I felt like I had a job and a service to provide. And part of that service was caring about people and learning about them, but it wasn't part of their service to get to know me. Right.
Yeah.
Which is also like kind of egocentric to say like, oh, don't you worry about me. I'm over here just doing my job for you. But how do you get started if you're like in a corporate job or a nonprofit or government and you are used to being more transactional, you're used to being insular, that you really only talk to the people in your network? How do you get out there?
I have 4 tips. Are you ready for them?
I am.
Okay. The first is slow down. I think so many of us move through our day with such speed that we often just miss opportunities to connect with people and to find meaning in moments. Now, I'm not saying we need to go slow or move slowly, but slowing down in general, I think could be really important for us as a culture and like as a society. So slowing down is, I think, really, really important. And the second thing is really being present in the moment. Multitasking, like I used to multitask like crazy. I'd have I have a work phone and a personal phone, and I'd be on them and I'd be on Instagram and, oh, there's a notification popped up and, oh, the Slack popped up and my Outlook thing popped up, and I'd always be on all these things, and you just miss the opportunity to be with what's in front of you. And so slow down. The second is be present, like put the phones away when you're talking to someone, turn off the notifications. A lot of us are working from home and remotely, and so we're on video calls all the time. Figure out a way to minimize distractions so that we can be fully present with someone and actually be with them. The third is to be curious, to ask curious questions, to think outside the box, and to ask yourself, oh, what's that about? Like, why does that, what's behind that person and what they just said, or that experience that they shared? Curiosity, I think, is something that we lose when we grow up. Many of us lose that. We lose imagination. We lose inquiry because, one, we want to know it all, right? We want to think that we know everything that there is, or we kind of feel like we grow out of curiosity. But that's such an important aspect in relationships, but like in life in general, as we live our lives. And the last one is to like truly listen, really hear what people are saying. And I have found a real difference in like active listening and being very present in that listening and just hearing the words that are coming out of people's mouth. It's really easy just to hear the words that come out of people's mouth, but it's, I think, much harder to like go beyond those words and hear what, like listen and hear what the meaning behind what someone is saying. And I think those are, like, for me, 4 things that I try to do in every conversation that I'm in. These are hard things for me. I like to move fast. My brain is always like 5 steps ahead and what I need to do tomorrow. And then, Lauren, after this call is done, I'm going to go do these 5 things. It's really easy for me to like live in the future or live in like what's coming up. But for me to be present with you right now is both a challenge sometimes and a real gift to deepening relationship and to being inside the container of what the possibility of a relationship can look like.
I love that. Those are great tips for getting present to the opportunity to get to know people. I love the listening piece of it because there are so many little nuggets and little moments where you can, I think you said double tap, which is super corporate speak, but where you can where you can double tap, right? And dig into something somebody said, right? You walk into somebody's office or get on a Zoom with somebody and you see a scratch on their face and you say, "Oh my gosh, are you okay? What happened to your face?" And they say, "Oh, my cat scratched me." Right? And then you can dig into that or not. Are you okay? Does
you
your
have-
cat normally scratch you? Are
Do you
all
have-
cats terrible? What do you think about giving your cat away? All those kinds of questions. No, but seriously, the opportunity is always there to deepen the conversation. And I had a client who was really introverted who said to me, I hate small talk. And I get that. I do not want to stand with somebody and talk about the weather. And, whoa, the sun is shining. Yesterday it wasn't shining. Tomorrow it won't be shining. It'll be sunny on Saturday. I don't care about that, right? What I care about is real conversation. And what it came down to for that client as well was that she wanted rich conversation and she needed to be able to get to a line of questioning that would lead her to real conversation. So I think listening for those opportunities to deepen the conversation. It's less about figuring out how to be in small talk. And it's more for me about how do I actually get to know you?
Yeah, no, the listening gives way to curiosity, right? Because if you're not actually hearing what people are saying, there's no way that you can be curious, right? They're just words. It's just sort of surface level. But if you're actually like in the conversation present, it just creates a path for deepening the relationship.
Yeah. So that's one way I would do it. The other is ask other people. Who do you know who? Who can I get in touch with who might be able to help me with X, Y, and Z? Even inside of a company, when you're networking inside of the company, who should I know? I want to learn more about marketing. Who might be willing to sit down and talk to me? And I think the big secret is people really love to talk about themselves.
Totally.
Right? I do. If somebody comes and asks me how I got into this career or why I moved here to Maryland from New York all those years ago, I'm happy to tell you the story. I'll make it fun and funny. And then I'll ask you about you. People like to be asked about themselves. And if you have questions to ask and you do get curious, you barely have to talk. And then you can get comfortable enough to talk, right? So if your first step in building relationships is just like getting out there, whether it's through your internal connections, whether it's through external connections, whether it's through networking on LinkedIn or Instagram, your opportunity is to ask people to talk about themselves, and they will. Tell me about a relationship that you've had that like you wouldn't have had if you or the other person hadn't reached out beyond the transactional.
Yeah, no, this is, I have I think a really powerful example of that. I had a colleague who we did not really connect in the beginning of our relationship. It was a little tenuous and challenging, and there was just lots of kind of friction in that relationship. And there was a moment where there was a massive breakdown in that relationship. And from that breakdown, we were able to create something that to this day is really beautiful and empowering and incredible. And I don't know how I would survive some of my work without this person. And so out of that really hard beginning came this really wonderful thing. And I think it was created by curiosity, by humility, by a genuine interest in understanding where this person was coming from. And I can't tell you how grateful I am for that whole experience. Everything is an opportunity to deepen a relationship, even when it's challenging and frustrating and it's hard. And if you're open and curious, like possibility is incredible and amazing. And so that's one of the things I am both most proud of in my life, the ability to turn a relationship around and also to maintain and sustain a really deep and meaningful relationship that has really given me so much in both my personal and my private life, and my private and my work life.
Yeah, I think I had a job in the investment industry, and we were the child company of a much larger parent company. And when I came in the door, I was told that they basically leave us alone and let us run our little operation. And I said, can I build a relationship with them? And the answer I got was, if you want to, you can. And for me, it was so rich, first of all, to have a bigger HR team by building a relationship with the parent company, But secondly, to then get invited to opportunities for my own professional growth and development, and to get invited to partner on projects, which just wouldn't have happened if we just were the child company and we
Right.
responded when a new grand company policy came about. So for my professional development, that was really profound for me to realize that I could be the bridge and the relationship builder. And eventually relationships across the organizations became stronger because once we were interested in each other, more of us became interested in each other. So that was really powerful. And personally, I have just become the reach out my virtual hand and shake person. I got really involved in LinkedIn starting a couple of years ago. And I have learned that I take a little time to build a relationship through the comments, through DMs, without being creepy or pushy or sales pitchy, because that's not my way. And I don't respond to that. But by building relationships or getting introduced to people who think I would get along with somebody else, I've been the person putting my hand out and saying, "Hi, I'm Lauren. Let's be friends. Let's chat," whatever it is. And people are grateful for that. And even though my little shy introvert is screaming on the inside saying like, "Don't do it. It'll seem stupid." What I know logically and the reward from it is that I've built some really incredible relationships across social media that have become real friendships with real people that some of whom I've met in person, some of whom I hop on Zooms with or share audio messages with all the time. And it has made my life better. And I've gotten and given business advice. I've gotten and given personal advice. I've just like laughed my head off with people. And I wouldn't know any of those people. My life wouldn't be this full of depth and joy if I weren't reaching out to people and asking them to hang out with me.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah. Well, John, I could talk to you all day about this.
So can I.
But we're coming to the end. Thank you so much for being with me always on this podcast. It's so much fun. I have so much fun with you.
So do I.
And we'll be back in 2 weeks. We're planning our topic. If you've got a topic idea for us, please let us know. Send us an email at icouldtalktoyouallday@gmail.com or DM us at I Could Talk to You All Day on Instagram. And we'll see you next time. We're so glad you joined us today.
Make sure to follow us on Instagram at I Could Talk to You All Day and tell your friends about us.